everyone. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Maybe you can start sharing the screen again.
Yeah.
Good. So it was great to have this exercise. We wanted to really open today from a place where we not only listen to what's going on in our heads, but try to also bring attention to the signals we receive from our bodies and other ways of thinking or seeing. And I think it's also helping us to have this exercise with you and get in the space to present this work that feels really personal in a way too. So we're gonna start here with a bit of reminder of the practice that we're trying to get into together with you, that we often call composting. So this capacity for holding space for wider conversation, wider relationship, and honing up to one's complicity and application in harm, to find maturity, to pause of narcissistic, hedonistic, and fixing compulsions, to other our self-images and self-narratives, to find the stamina and sobriety to show up differently, and to turn towards unlimited responsibility. Next one.
Yeah. And so we also wanted to remind you about the bus practice, which I understand you've been doing periodically throughout the sessions and in the in-between sessions when Stephen and I aren't able to join you. Just a reminder that the practice is about observing yourself, all of the parts of yourself, what's happening within you without judgment. And really trying to examine the complexity within yourself, understand the complexity within yourself, to be able to understand the complexity outside of yourself a little better, be able to be in that space. It's the opportunity to come to composting what is going on within you, to be able to do the collective work together in ways that really calibrate towards what is needed as a group. And if we have time, we will do a bus check-in later in the session. But we're going to play it, as Molly said, we're going to be flexible and go with it.
Also, a reminder that as you engage with this work, please remember that our tools are pedagogical. So the Mountain of Entitlement is not meant to describe reality comprehensively and universally, nor predict the future, but to draw attention to processes and dynamics that are around us and within us, and that are often actively avoided, and to expand our capacity for difficult conversations where relationships do not fall apart. And here we're bringing also a new image today that talks a bit about what is the process of diving deeper into this work and to look for stamina, to look at our connections to harm, at the many crises sometimes and storms that are around us. So the stamina that it takes to go from identifying issues to finding solution, and to really find the stamina to start thinking a bit and face complexity. And this is a bit why we asked for your consent at the last meeting for bringing a different type of images to the conversation. It was really asking your consent of, do you want to dive a bit deeper and really go to more murky waters and look at maybe things that something feels impossible, but sometimes that are the things that we can't not do either. even if they seem impossible.
So the Mountain of Entitlement, and I know Molly shared a link, and that link included all of the cartographies that Mo, Rach, Stephen, and I created last year during COVID. And wanted to say just a little bit more about the creation of those cartographies. They came after Vanessa came to visit with us, and we had a learning session ourselves, diving deeper into the work of the collective and what decolonial practices would mean for us, and how we want to be working with them, and what we could bring back. So not that we were consuming what the collective had to offer, but really how do we engage with it? How do we translate it for the context that we work in? So I work in government, Stephen works in nonprofit, Mo and Rach work in so many different ways as consultants in participatory leadership, in graphic recording. And so we were really looking at how could we offer something that is our translation in our context. And the Mountain of Entitlement really is that. It is our attempt to try to explain and uncover and offer a perspective on aging, but not just aging, not as in aging what it is to be older, but what it is to be in the process of aging throughout a life course, and what that looks like in particular in Western cultures where we are and where we're doing our work. And I just want to note that in the last session, we offered the story of the 4 mountains. The mountain, this is the Mountain of Entitlement. So it was partially inspired by the conversation about the mountain. And I think it's important to recognize that the 4 mountains that we offered was an Indigenous perspective around life course, and that this is distinctly different than that this is a different perspective, and that is one that that we're going to walk through. We're going to do it, and we're going to do in a little bit of a participatory way. So we're going to offer you some of our thoughts around the slides or the frames that we've created, and we are going to invite you to also contribute what resonates for you and what might be different or what you might be seeing. So we're gonna give this a go and have a little try at it. So this is the first frame. This is the mountain that we know, the Mountain of Entitlement. It is really looking at our entitlements to and our desires for safety, control, certainty, money, resources, wealth. It is about stability, our feeling that these are things that we have a right to have, that we have deep desires for. And in the frame, you can see that there are 2 pathways. On the left side of the mountain, you see a pathway of competition, where there is a sense and a feeling of, I deserve it. If you work harder, if I work harder, I'll get it. If you just worked harder, you'll get these things. That it's mine, that I have a right to it, that it belongs to me. And then on the left side of the mountain, you see a path of cooperation. So on this side, it's a changed narrative around it's ours. And if we work together, we will be able to accomplish what we want. If I help you, we will get to the top of the mountain. We will be able to realize the things we are entitled to, the things that we desire. Stephen, did you have anything?
Yes, and also this mountain is really trying to bring forward a view of modernity and its kind of obsession for progress and always having more and always trying to reach this point that actually seems unattainable. And and it really, and yes, there's also something we wanted to highlight, showing you this, and as we said, it's our perspective, and it's a way to translate the world we see around us, and that you might have yet connection to this mountain, but also feel like you've been dancing with also a different mountain throughout your life, that maybe as sisters, as people involved really more deeply with religion, probably that, and people who did vows too, the top of your mountain might feel a bit different too. So you might have a mountain that we, Justin and I, couldn't draw because there are some of your aspiration and the desire that you were that you grew up with that are different. So here the invitation is really to start to see of what are the things here at the top that you connect with, and not, and what are the different things that would come with you, and also if you feel connected in any way to the characters that are going up the mountain. So we're going to take a little time here to let you sit with this question of what else could be at the top of your mountain.
And if anybody feels moved to be able to put to words what some of those things might be, then we would invite you to unmute and just in a few words share some of the things that might be at the top of your mountain.
This might not be what y'all want to hear, but as a woman in a heavily heteropatriarchal society, there's empowerment at the top of that mountain. There is a certain allure for me as a white woman, and I admit it might all be tied to control, money, and stability. But I'm just so aware that if I had been born 20 years earlier, I would definitely be a vowed sister now. I take vows of a different type, but as a co-member of a faith-based community, there's also community at the top of my personal mountain, which is wonderful support as we try and figure out all this shit together and compost it somehow collectively. So, and I love the graphic, by the way, but I think it's a very complicated mountain, or maybe it's on my personal bus, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, there's more frames to come. But yeah, thank you for that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to say, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. No, we can hear you, Eleanor.
Okay, I'd just like to say, I think I'd like to have at the top of my mountain a feeling that I'm loved and accepted and worthwhile. I think that's really important. And it's something that I'm not sure so many of us have.
Thank you.
We have raised hand, Lucy.
Yeah, I certainly follow the last one of saying a sense of belonging, and that all is gift to be shared. Our deep commitments as well as community, and the reverencing of all that is. I guess I would look at there's a third way up. And instead of it being talked about as cooperation, because cooperation in my mind is always involving co-opting somebody. And collaboration means that we will work together. Nobody's one idea is the way, but together we collaborate to achieve it. And so if that's what you mean on the side up of helping each other as collaboration, I really like the drawing. That's what I would say. It resonates deeply.
Great.
Then lastly, there's Blair, and then we're gonna follow along.
Just briefly, this is overlapping with some of the concepts already on the top, but I had recognition as well. Mm-hmm. Recognition for the gifts that you bring, or being seen as someone with something to offer, expertise.
Great. Thank you for that.
And then we have the second frame of the mountain, who kind of highlights what really the mountain is and what it really asks us to deny to keep going up. So the mountain is actually a pile of bodies, of human bodies, of non-human bodies, and really bringing the fact that either way that we're trying to go up this mountain, there is connection to the arms that are connected to the mountain. So we see here that the characters are saying something a bit different. So on the left side, so it's not my problem. Lock them up, keep me safe. Everything is fine. So we see that we're responding to denial with violence. And then on the other side, the side that we often talk about a lot of people that are in social innovation. It's together we can fix it, and more voices at the table will solve it. If we just have representation of every type of people in the community, it's gonna be solved, and we're gonna know what to do. And then the landscape just gets a bit bigger, and there's a valley at the bottom of the mountain, and there are people who said, well, we're not gonna go up this mountain. We are better than that, because those people saw some cracks where through the crack there's a hint of a shitty smell, a really shitty smell, a smell of rot, a smell of violence. So they stopped eating meat. They started donating to the cause, and they feel that we are all one, and that we should just stop going up the mountain, and it will solve it actually if we just all stay at the bottom and buy plastic water bottles and refillable water bottles to save the planet. What do you have to add, Jocelyn?
Yeah, I think that the only thing I have to add is how still on this mountain that the desires are about what's at the top of the mountain. And so so even if we're not climbing, it's still connected to what are the things that are driving us to continue to move in this way and to be in the world this way. And I think in particular, those who are sitting at the bottom of the mountain, we talk in this frame a lot about the 4 denials that the collective offers. So the denial of violence. So we really have to be denying the violence of this mountain to continue to be climbing it. The denial of the unsustainability of accumulation of wealth, use of resources, the limits of the planet, that we really have to be denying the entanglement with all of us, those who are climbing the mountain, those who are in the mountain, those who are at the bottom of the mountain, and then in particular, those who are at the bottom of the mountain, really the denial of the complexity of the problem. So if we donate to the cause, that will solve it. If we stop eating meat, if we do the refillable water bottles, those kinds of things that are really linked to a denial of how complex this challenge really is, this problem really is.
And we talked about, we often talk about this part of the mountain, about the virtue signaling part. Those are the people who are virtue signaling. And this was a way for us to kind of put, I think, an image, the way we were feeling that engaging in a deeper path or a more responsible path of accountability and starting to welcome and sit with all the work of the collective, it really felt like that something was missing still there in this perspective of we are all one, and the work of the collective really helped us trying to see some hints of how can we start to relate differently and take accountability for what is in the mountain and what is in the cracks, and how are we actually going to compost this mountain, because we can't let it rot. Because if we don't open more cracks, there's not going to be oxygen going in, and we won't process this collective shit. So there's no way forward without actually looking at what's in it and learning from it, to not just start another mountain and not just start another pile of body, and really learn from what is there. So we're gonna leave you with a new question around this frame. So how do you connect to the harms of this mountain, or the different harm that you could see in the different mountain that we talked about earlier? And also if you see connection with the different characters that you see on here. And we're gonna take a couple of interventions still. And also we invite you today to be really mindful of if you have spoken already, to make sure that we all have a chance to bring our voices at the table.
Steve.
Molly.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking at this mountain and the rot and the stink of the rot upon which we are. And it seems like all of us are there. And here's the same mountain. All, you know, the Trumpsters on the left, lock them up. It's not my problem. And all us good people on the right, lying down as a part of it, doing our meditations. You know, it's still the same mountain, right? So provocative for me is the more cracks needed to air it out and compost it. And so it's a sense of, you know, where's the opening? Where are the cracks? Where does the light and come in to enable the composting? This is deep for my thought at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the question was, how do I connect to the harms of this mountain? Sorry. So I'm in that mountain. I'm all of this, right? I'm all the good parts. I'm all the bad parts. It's the lineage. I have the shit inside me because the harms that were done is my lineage. It's my cellular memory. It's who I am. It's my embodiment. So I am deeply, deeply connected to the harms of this mountain. And what cracks do I need in my own body, in my own psyche, in my own self to clear the rot?
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah.
Libby and then Tony.
I was only going to say it's just overwhelming, overwhelmingly complex. I relate to everything that Molly said. And I want to stretch out that line and not have a mountain, but that's simplistic. So how do we metabolize what we see inside the mountain? We have to somehow digest all of that and flatten out that mountain somehow.
Thank you, Libby. Tony?
I'm trying to think of, oh, this is terrible, and so I want something different. And when I try to picture something different, I notice I still want a mountain. I want to have a place that I can go up on top and get the lay of the land and see some perspective. And I don't exactly want it. I want it not to be this mountain, but can't there be a better mountain?
Thank you, Tony. I think we had Anna and then Lynn and then Mary, and then we're going to have to move on to the next one, the next frame. Or Sylvia, I see you had your hand up too. Okay, Anna.
So I guess I think of poor Sisyphus, who was Libby. I guess I think of poor Sisyphus, who was always struggling to push that rock up the mountain. And I end up in a similar place with Molly and Libby, thinking that about the fallacy of the mountain, that that we have to climb and struggle, and not to dismiss the process or the actuality of struggle in our lives. But I too would like to see those lines flattened into a valley, a verdant valley, where there is nourishment and possibility for everyone. And I kind of like those people at the bottom crack. We are all one. I do understand how that can be, oh, well, what is she denying? So some of my thoughts.
Great, thank you. Lynn?
I think I'm coming to the awareness as we do classes and I reflect on things that I am so intent on fixing things that maybe I don't pay enough attention to. Some things are unfixable and I have to get off the mountain and make it, see it differently and act differently or put my energies in different places. But it seems like I gotta fix this. And some things just aren't fixable. And a lot of our systems are not fixable. Thank you.
Thanks. Mary.
Yeah, first I just want to acknowledge, I did go online and look at all of these, prior to our meeting today, and I can just say I don't know if we're going to move to those listings of the denials, but that was just so profoundly affirming and validating for me that somebody had put those together, some senses that I had run into before and was not able to distinctively articulate. So one, just thank you for that. But part of that is, when I see this mountain, I am so grateful on this slide that you included a valley, because life is just not one giant, the earth is not one giant mountain. It's not one giant mound. And I feel connected to all that. What I also really appreciated was looking at, I've used and learned in the past this metaphor about when you point the finger at somebody else, there means there's three pointing back at you. So I've always, for a long time, have tried to keep that in perspective. And one of the things, the learnings that I have been struggling with is I look at my own footprint of how I'm contributing to these things. And then it's not just about recycling. It's not just about any of these one things, because we have so much interdependence in the system that we live. And so what can I do in feeling helpless? What can I do, not just as myself as an individual, but because I'm interconnected with others, regardless of my living situation. I live in community now. I was living singularly, kind of out in the middle of nowhere as a hermit before, but I could not extract myself from contributing. And so I had to look at the little things of, where do I vote with my dollar every day? Am I purchasing from here? Am I banking from there? And instead of feeling helpless and hearing others, being a witness for them, but also realizing the absence of accountability, that it's a full accountability. And I appreciate that, again, this mountain represents in this graph that it is all made up of composted materials, and which is true to also, geology. It's over thousands of years. And so in the short period of time, I come from a lineage that has managed to really create a lot of organic and inorganic toxic materials. So what can I do wholly as a person and acknowledge that I'm a whole person, that I contribute right now today, as has my lineage contributed to that, and take ownership of it, and that I am a stakeholder in this, and be a mirror for that for others in a gentle, loving way, but also not doing it from a place or a stance of violence, including emotional or spiritual violence. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Sylvia.
I appreciate where you're taking us, and I think the teachings on denial are really important, but there are a few things that were just really strong responses in me from before the session, looking, as someone else has spoken about, looking at these materials ahead of time. One first response was, I don't go up the mountain from one side or the other. I'm always spiraling. I'm sometimes acting in a competitive way. I'm sometimes acting in a collaborative way. And I actually don't know anybody ever, no matter the mountain, who's trying to go straight up. And so that intertwining of things was, and the recognition of using all of those ways including co-opting or cooperating as part of my own experience. It could be because I just co-facilitated a session yesterday that was entirely about Atawampamunk and two-eyed seeing, but I can't look at this cartography with any kind of ease in my being, because mountain imagery for me is so much about strength and earth and bedrock. This makes me want to move away. it doesn't invite me into going deeper, because it's a mountain of death. It's a valley of death. It's chasms into depth. One of the visuals that comes up for me right away comes from film footage in Africa of watching Africans harvest the massive tusks into an absolute mountain of ivory and then burn it. And that was in a beautiful, beautiful landscape. And so I just, in that sense, this speaks to the complexity of what's happening, that there's no one place to look, one approach that leads us out. And to me, there's a fifth denial. And I say that listening, Stephen, to one of the last things you added about the people who are on the flat there, the virtue signaling. Because that to me is the denial that there are no small actions and that every action matters. And so that was another place of, I mean, whether you want to call it reactivity, it was certainly just something else that spoke to me. And I really appreciated what Anna and a couple of other speakers said about that we don't actually do any of this, including, like, as horrific as this is, we don't do it without nourishment, that there's never a landscape or a system that doesn't have nourishment in it. And so for me, it always pulls me to those questions of who's getting the payback, whether it's at the top of the mountain or the way back, and who's paying, who's being buried, and whose backs are we standing on.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I have some little bits maybe to add or to respond, and I like what was said about the idea of fixing. We illustrated the mountain to also talk about this kind of fixing compulsion that we have in our colonial mindset, that we can solve the system just by patching it, and how this is in a way kind of rooted in toxic positivity of, like, if we just all have good intentions and all do those little actions, it would just be differently. But this is, the not looking at the crack really actually doesn't give us opportunity to learn from what is in the crack. And also bringing the question that maybe I forgot in my first telling, but also we like to bring attention at the top of the mountain as what is happening there, what is happening when you virtually reach it, as we call it. When we imagine it, we first call the top the false promises of retirement, and so there's this idea of false promises that we see in the top of the mountain, and really trying to bring your imagination to also what is actually happening. What are we actually attaining at the top of the mountain, if there's really something for us there? Anything that comes for you, Jocelyn? Oh, and one last thing about the other one. Just making a parallel about what everybody said about recognizing ourselves in the many characters there, and just want to make a link with why we have the practice of the bus. So the practice of the bus is actually to see all of those when you're facing a conflict, and see reflecting on who's driving my bus at the moment. Is it the person who wants more voices at the table? Is it someone who wants everything to be fine? Or is it someone who wants to donate to the cause? So really all of them are present in us. but it just happened or are triggered in different ways at different times. And the why we practice with the bus is to find the capacity to recognize when they are there and they want to continue the cycle of the mountain. So we can change now. And here we have a frame that you haven't seen in the video if you looked at it, because, and I'm gonna be quick about this one, but it's a new frame we added this week and throughout the work we did with presenting the mountain so far. And because you've probably seen that looking at the storm categories, if you did the exercise, we talk in the storm categories of low intensity struggle and high intensity struggle people. So here this frame is really to illustrate that the mountain, as we said earlier, talks about our perspectives as white settler on Turtle Island, but some people don't even have access to engage in the cycle of the mountain. It's even a kind of privilege to be within the wall of this mountain. And here we see that the crack is a bit bigger, and there's, as much as the wall and the mountain says welcome, there's actually not a way to come in if you don't have somebody from the inside that is helping you. So this frame is really just to highlight that with everything that we're pointing with those images, it talks about us and people in high intensity struggle that are facing the storms differently right now, probably live a different way and probably are not looking for the same mountain, and it might not look like a mountain, and we don't know because well, most of us are in what we consider as low intensity struggles because we don't, it depends of the way we were impacted by the many crises. Anything to add, Jocelyn?
No, I think that you covered that really well. This is our a next level, another level of us really exploring how to share some of the ideas. And that was one of the ideas that came up when we shared with some Indigenous and African Nova Scotian Black folks that we've been working with about the mountain not speaking, and that while there are elements of the mountain that does speak, there's also a real lack of showing the kind of barriers to access. So this is something we're playing with that we thought we'd share.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So this frame of the mountain is really an invitation to begin to really sit with and recognize the colonial desires, to really be able to sit with the hard things, to look inside the crack, to be able to really fully feel the complicity and harm, to really look at what is coming from the harms, and how can we sit with the feeling of falling apart, the feeling of hopelessness, the feeling of needing and wanting to do something, the feeling of overwhelm that might come, and also to recognize that even when you feel like maybe those strings and pulls aren't pulling me, that sometimes you turn around and realize, oh, I am being pulled. I'm being, called to this top of the mountain. How deep that can go in ways that we might not recognize and find ourselves again climbing. And when we were creating this, we were also inspired by the work of Bio Akumulafe. I can't actually, I'm not sure on the pronunciation of his last name. He's one of the founders of the Emergence. Akomalafe. Thank you very much. And he was talking about the monstrous arrivants. And so this is our attempt to try to invoke and share what are the monstrous arrivants that are coming from this violent, unsustainable separability and lack of recognition of the complexity. What is coming from that, and how do we sit and look inside the crack to breathe the oxygen there, to be able to have those harms composted, to find the place in the fertile land for something else that might be unimaginable in the current place and space that we are to come to life. Stephen?
Yes, and I think in ways those characters all came to us because they represented many things that we've experienced through our decolonial journey, but really in the path of trying to really absorb what it means, what the harm means, and the connection to it really means, and inviting you today to also make space for those feelings when you are, it's engaging or stopping to engage on the path to the mountain, or trying to stop to engage. And this is really a long journey that takes practice, but that really often feel disorienting, and that's actually normal. And that's something that we wanted to talk about, because it's often when something is speaking to you in your body that you need to listen to what's happening around, and how discomfort might speak sometimes to something bigger, and that's something that you have to listen to. And that this path of looking at the violences won't be a path that will feel safe or clear, or because it's a different way of being, it's a different way of engaging, a different way of seeing. So it's a big work to do. And then, do you think we're ready for the last one? Okay. So then, we were reflecting on what next. What do we offer to people after offering them this mountain that is full of violence and dead bodies? And as we said, like, we don't know, it's outside our imagination, because our imagination is within colonial framework. Our imagination looks for certainty, for safety, for all the things that we're used to look for. So what we felt to invite people to at the end of this exercise, it's to face a portal, to face a storm, actually, to face the storm of the many crises that are around us, but to face it with accountability and responsibility, and to be in this work of finding the stamina to keep walking toward that portal or storm that is still a mystery, that we still have to figure out what it will look like. But as we don't know what it is, we also invite you to think about what it's not, what what should not be on the other side of the portal, because we know it's probably not a world of complete certainty. It's not going to be a world of unlimited autonomy. It's not going to be. It's going to be a world of responsibility, probably, of more accountability. So, what this portal is not for you. How does it help us turn away from the top of the mountain, and how do we stop reproducing the same denials to really try to orient toward a different horizon that are not about building another mountain? So what do we need to let go of to do that?
Is it okay if I jump in here?
Yes.
You know, the last picture, the last photography that you had of the mountain with those little fuzzy things, it looked to me almost like the coronavirus. You know, it had kind of a jumbly and dotted appearance. And I was thinking how amazing it is that the coronavirus is acting like we are all interconnected. There's no one that's special or different, and how it affects all of us in one way or in the other. So I don't know, you know, I don't know if this is something like this is going to help us let go of the notion that we're not affected, that we're all, no matter who you are, where you are in the mountain or not on the mountain, we're all in this in a very particular way. And so to let go of that exceptionalism, or, you know, whatever it is, I don't know. It really struck me that it looked very much like Corona.
So Karen raised her hand.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. When you ask the question, what do you need to let go of, and how do we stop reproducing, and what this portal is not, all of those are it's like all of those are in some ways creating a vacuum, and it's really hard to stop doing something when you don't know what you're then wanting to move to. So one of the questions that came up earlier had to do with, or a statement was, we cannot imagine another possibility. Someone said it in so many words. And I would agree that we cannot imagine it with the same feet planted in the concrete Western mindset. There is no room to move to another place when you're stuck in that mindset. However, most of the people I suspect on this call, certainly I can say most of the people that I like to hang out with, have had pretty amazing, mystical breakthrough experiences that are definitely not something that our colonial culture talks about, and in fact is very fearful of. It's why the mystics of the ages have always been kicked out of the church. And I heard some languaging that was used by several of the people talking about a mountain that did not sound like it was coming from the colonial mindset at all. And it had to do with belonging. And it had to do with acceptance, all of kind of the basic things that all beings need. And there's something, and I've also talked to people who've been on amazing psilocybin trips and, you know, drug-induced states of consciousness that from the reports I've heard, Michael Pollan is one of the articulators of this, is that people can imagine another possibility when they come either in personal contact personally, or through somebody else, they can begin to catch glimpses of another possibility. So I can say that when I look at these questions that sit before me right now, I am transported into the mystical experiences of oneness that are not part of our Western culture at all, but they are very visceral. I can tell you exactly what that feels. What I couldn't tell you in words probably, but oh my God. I mean, that to me is ecstasy. It's heaven on earth. And it oftentimes happens out in the natural, we call the natural world, in communication with species other than humans. So I just need to, I don't think we're going to be willing to let go of things until we actually can imagine another possibility.
Thank you, Karen. Sally?
I think I'm grappling with letting go of that positivity, and I think I have a question around: is there is hope or wanting to be hopeful? Could that be on top of that mountain? Is there a room or a place for hope, trying to be hopeful in this picture here? Yeah.
We talk about hope, but it's a different horizon of hope. I said earlier, I used the word toxic positivity, and this came because we actually created those frames in the first weeks of the pandemic together. And at the beginning of the pandemic here in the province of Quebec in Canada, there was a huge movement with a hashtag that said everything's gonna be fine. So I was working in aging every day, hearing from colleagues in long-term care saying everything is not fine, everything is imploding. But everywhere outside of my work, looking at the news, speaking with other people, nobody was speaking about what was happening in long-term care. And I was going on Facebook and everybody was sharing the hashtag, like, everything's gonna be fine. And I was like, and there was such a disconnect for me in this, and I couldn't say everything's gonna be fine. It's like, there's literally piles of bodies in long-term care facilities. How can we say it's fine? So the ability to say it's fine to me really highlighted the separability capacity that we have, that here in this case is rooted in ageism. But it's that capacity to really separate ourselves from the trouble or the shit that is happening, and not feeling connected to the harm. How can you not feel connected to the dying bodies in long-term care? That's what I was sitting with, because I felt really connected to it. And that was really making it impossible for me to go business as usual. So I couldn't look for stability or those things at the top of the mountain, because I was like, we can't do that. We actually have to manage a pile of shit that just opened. And that is reminding us that for years and years, we have defunded healthcare system with years and years of reforms to optimize it, actually. But all it did was create harm within the system, was creating the condition for when a pandemic hits, when the storm hits, where there's actually not any resilience in that system. And there's no way to even go help those people because we're all disconnected from them. There's no internet in those facilities. So they are literally physically disconnected to us, but that also speaks about our relationships. So here we're trying to talk about hope in a way that's calibrated differently. That's hard to explain, but that's because there was still hope in us creating these, but it was a hope of something that, yes, was bringing to something different, but that couldn't be an utopia, because utopia is not possible, and that felt really irresponsible for us to think about utopia. It was, we were setting our hope into looking at the dying, what's happening with the dying, because that's where our hope was lying, of learning from this. But this is something that is not easy to look at, and that as a society, we won't look at, where we have tendency to say, well, we had a problem during the crisis, so we need to find a new model for long-term care. So we're redirecting to a new reform, a new progress, a new mountain, a new way to stabilize things and have control over how the dying happens. But we won't be able to actually think about a different model of long-term care if we don't sit with what is happening right now. And we don't take time to sit with what is wrong in our relationship to start from. And that makes us imagine long-term care so separated from the rest of our communities, from the rest of the metabolism. So this is why we use those to really say, we need to sit with the shit and the shit that are brought from the storm before we can't set the new horizon of hope. Because if we do it too early, we're gonna reproduce the patterns that we know. So this is why this kind of grounding zone that we're presenting in the frame where there are the monsters arriving, this is the space where you see the shit there, you see the people dying, and you're like, I cannot, like, my entire soul is telling me not to continue what I do. And I also like what was said about, it's hard to imagine what we don't know. And this is why this work takes stamina, because we're not able to come at the end of this workshop and say, here are the 5 steps to this new world. But we have to build a stamina to stay with the shit together, and the togetherness is really important. This is why this is work that happens in groups and in relationship, because we get in those spaces where we feel like we're breaking up, and we have to have people where, as Jocelyn and I do for each other, we check in our buses together and we remind ourselves of are we back at going to the mountain today, or are we checking in back in with really what feels true to us and what feels accountable to what's happening around us. So maybe I went in many ways there. Correct me, Jocelyn, if I'm wrong. And if not, you can invite the other people to talk.
Yeah, no, I think that was, it was elements of what I was going to offer as well, which is to be mindful of the deliciousness of colonialism and modernity that are the things that we attach ourselves to, and to be cautious, to be cautious of hopefulness that doesn't recognize and doesn't sit with the accountability and responsibility towards the harms, to not get caught up into that, that possibility of I can just bypass and go there. That there is a step. There was something that I had seen recently was that, you know, you're trying to get to healing before the accountability and responsibility, and the importance of taking those steps. So that would be it. And Donna, you've had your hand up for a little while, so.
Thank you. This is hard. This is very hard to hear, to grapple with, to sit with, and I know that's true for many of us. The language, I'm struggling with the language that we say, because so many things we say are different than what I think we're trying to get across. The last line here, what do you need to let go of? It just shot out at me. How dare I think that I am entitled enough to let go of something? That what a circle that is. I mean, my entitlement tells me that I have the ability to choose what to let go of. Bullshit. The way the earth is going right now, things are being ripped apart. My arms and legs are being ripped off, and I don't even see it. I'm not, you know, there's the way our society is going. It's the violence, I don't know, your economic struggles, and what, Stephen, what you were talking about, just the situation of people dying in the rest homes, and the isolation that COVID has caused. I don't have a choice. I'm not entitled to choose what to let go of. Let me just realize what is happening, and and then it puts me in a real, well, like Sally was saying, hopeless. Where's hope in this? And it puts me in a real, like that picture of the mountain, inactive and torn apart and broken. And however, that's where this is putting me right now. So thank you, I guess, or not. I'm going to be quiet now.
Tony, thank you, Donna. You're on mute, Tony.
I'm realizing that this portal is so important. I think it was Karen who said we can't let go of what we know, the Mountain of Entitlement, until we have a picture of what's on the other side. And I kind of want to challenge that, in the sense that a portal, in going into a totally different world, it can't be anything I know, because that would be limiting. You know, I'd have to have an imagination that I don't have. And I was thinking about the imagination of a caterpillar. So the caterpillar is approaching whatever metamorphosis is going to go on. But what it can't imagine is that what's going to be on the other side isn't just going to be a different view. It's going to be with different molecules of my body. I'm going to be reconfigured somehow. So what strikes me about this portal is how, you know, how we're still trying to hold on to certainty. I'm still trying to be able to picture it, but I have to let go of that. I think it was Joanna Macy who said one time, we have to let go of hope, because we can't imagine anything
big enough for the things that are to come. So it's not just my landscape is going to be different, but my molecules are going to be arranged in a different way. That's what I see on the other side of this portal. That's it.
Now would be Lucy.
Kind of what I'm picking up on with the portal, and I don't know how this exactly fits, but with the mountain, we are so focused on end product or tangible stuff. And I think the portal is inviting, and I agree with Karen and Tony, we can't imagine what it is, but it is a shifting from thinking we know with certainty what the future is to allowing process instead of end product to be what is significant in terms of relationships. And I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but it's like, for me, there's a paradigm shift of not holding and clinging to what is known, but to be willing and open to embrace that a process is happening. And that's what's critical. I don't need to know what the end products are. I just have to be willing to, almost like with the virus, live with the uncertainty, because that's more reality than the tangible stuff. Uncertainty is a given in life. And I think what we're doing is shifting, and to address and let go of so much of what's been is going to require us to embrace this thing of process as more important. I don't know. You certainly are driving me nuts today.
I'll take that as a compliment in this line of work.
Please do. But I just have to agree with Karen in terms of what our mystical experience is about, if not finding that unity and oneness, sense of belonging and sense of significance. It's like the paradox of the New Universe story of knowing that I am virtually insignificant in terms of the immensity of it all, but that every single thing I do has a direct impact on the evolutionary process. And so in one sense, we each are so significant, we can't even imagine how significant we are. Kind of like God loves us so much that we can't even imagine what that love is. But yet, I'm just a speck of in the cosmos.
Thank you. And quickly, I think there's, just to speak a bit about that, for us, there's, as colonial ways are ways of intellectualizing everything, for us, there is a certainty that at least when we're orienting to this portal, we don't only do it in an intellectualizing way, but we do it by listening to our bodies individually and collectively, and through spirituality too, I think. Yeah. We won't be able to get to different places of imagination if we keep working with the same ways of knowing. and listening. So I have one last hand that is raised, and then we would continue. So it's Kathleen.
I
Oh, we lost you.
Kathleen, you muted yourself. Sorry, start over again from the beginning.
I was debating whether or not this was appropriate to bring in here, and all of a sudden I saw my hand raised. So I hope this is appropriate. A couple of things have been happening to me this week that I think fit in here. One is the discovery that I can't do everything. And people who know me will kind of laugh and say, oh, yeah, well, we'll see. But I have tried to do everything. I think since a very young child when I lost my mother, I do everything right so I don't lose anybody else, etc. So that's one awareness that I have to stop thinking that I can do everything and trying to do everything. And the second piece is that I need to discover, embrace, maybe not so fast embrace, but discover, explore, maybe eventually embrace my rage. I was a quiet, very proper kid for lots of reasons. I don't think I've ever let myself experience rage. And I see that as an invitation. And through these mountains, through a lot that we've been saying, that's what I need to do at this point. And listening to my body is key in all this, and getting in touch with the energy of rage. And anyway, that's kind of where I am, which is, who knows? We'll see where it goes. So thank you.
And then I think we had the hand of Catherine that was up that I forgot to.
Okay, thank you. I've been thinking about without mind, to go back to the nature of our humanity and allow from that the nature of who we are as humans to let rise the imagination that we need or that we can explore to engage with the shit. And it would be mindless, without mind. And that's what some people have said, and because if we go back to nature, and nature will heal us. Nature will show us, because look, just look. But we have to allow the imagination to come out of that. And not jump on an answer, but to explore those imaginings. That's all.
Thank you, Catherine. So I'm looking at the time, and it's flowing quickly as ever. So we thought that maybe we could share a last image with you before we go. Because yeah, this work is about looking at the shit, as we say, but it's also to find ways to do it with lightness and joy too, and that's why we work with images that also are doodly, because we don't want to leave you petrified today about all of these things that can be a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to take on, but yeah, it's a long time work, and when we talk about this practice of composting and this image of the onion that is unpeeling, it's really to be gentle with yourself and just take time to attune your radars to see when you are maybe in ways of being that are maybe reproducing something that you actually don't want to happen. So it's really to start attuning yourselves to your ways of being and startly being able to have language to see like, oh, I'm this little person now trying to go up the mountain by pushing others. So maybe I can bring somebody else on at the wheel of my bus. And we also share this image of the buffalo that was shared to us by Vanessa Andreotti from the collective, and that is a story that has more layer that she received from an indigenous elder, but it's about the buffalo in the storm. So this is why we talk about the portal also as a storm, because it's a challenge to walk toward it and to keep doing it, and there's the history of the buffalo when it's crossing a snowstorm. It has to go at a certain pace, because if the buffalo goes too fast, it's just gonna tire himself, and it's gonna tire himself in the snowstorm and just die there. But if it also goes too slow, the buffalo will get stuck with snow. The snow, it's just gonna fall over him, so it's gonna get immobilized. So while you leave this workshop today with having looked at all these things that can be a bit disorienting, and it won't make sense today or even tomorrow, but they will take time to puzzle together, but really remember to find your own pace through this storm. And there's no way of doing it fast, and sometimes stopping moving will just immobilize you. So it's finding the way to keep moving with a bit of lightness and being gentle with yourself about we're all connected to these arms. So there's no pointing at who's worst or not, but really checking with ourselves first and starting to engage differently with others and the other beings around us. Jocelyn?
Thank you for that. Yes, this work is a long, lifelong journey. And thank you for offering that, Stephen. This graphic also gives a hint to what we may be sharing next time, going a little deeper on the House of Modernity as a possibility. Where is there we are, okay. I was also asked whether I could share the link to the centering practice from earlier, and I will make sure that that's in the presentation for those who would like to see it. I just want to say thank you to you all. And as always, it's been a real pleasure to dive a little deeper and be able to share this with you. And I look forward to the next time and being able to share more. And if you want or need, please do reach out. And then I think we're handing it back to Molly.
Yeah, taking the privilege of having it handed back to me. How great is that? And I think just a couple of things that came for me is the discussion of the accountability and responsibility before healing, which is, this is my interpretation, so everyone just take this as Molly, which is sitting and understanding that there is discomfort, I think suffering, and there is rage and there is grief. And I think that the rage and the grief I hear as well in this today, you know, that the blessing of the cracks breaking open, the blessing that there is the possibility that by opening the shit will clear out, compost, and the light. So I see that as a blessing rather than a hope. And, you know, for me, the major question of who are we as humans? You know, there's no two ways about it. Who are we within nature? And I just want to say that I have realized that this is a really important power animal for me at this point, at this very point in my life. And it just, you know, it was really impactful today to understand that it's not just humans, okay? It's not just me, how am I to be a human, but how am I to be in relationship with the rest of life. So thank you for letting me say that. And I would like to unmute everyone because I invite us to say our words, you know, popcorn, about how we feel, one or two words. And then I'll just say we have a reminder, if it's very obvious, when our next meetings are. So I don't think we need to belabor that. So if we all might just say some of our sense of how we feel at this point.
Delightfully depressed.
Seen and connected.
Caterpillar juice.
Sober.
Floating in uncertainty.
Brilliantly companion.
Companioned.
I think just go with the flow.
Creator spirit voiced.
Insignificantly significant.
Overwhelmed.
Kind of wandering around.
Deeply challenged.
Kind of mystified at what could be.
Trusting the emergence.
Is that an other than human animal sound?
I'm gonna say it sounds like a family and didgeridoo.
What is it? Oh, it's dog.
Yeah, a dog that wants to play.
Hey, puppy.
Oh, yes. We are connected as long as we have a ball in our hand. No. thank you all for everything. Thank you for being with us, for us being together, for the provocation of community and the possibility of collaboration and just being together.